how do we lovingly challenge pastors who we observe are shrinking back from important and what some would call polarizing social issues?
You know, I get this question often, sadly, and I don't know how to lovingly do that. That was the key word in your question. How do you lovingly do that? I'm not so sure Jesus was loving when he called the Pharisees, "You brood of vipers, you hypocrites, you whitewashed tombs."
I think he was smiling, though. When he
Well, he might have said it with a smile, but I think it's just time that they need to get called out, and I think it's going to take some courageous people to call them out.
I might add to that is that if you have a pastor and you've prayed for him, and I would suggest you pray for him first, then you talk with him, and then if they continue to avoid the issues of our day in terms of applying Scripture, then you need to find a church that preaches the whole counsel of God.
Yeah, that's right.
But also they can buy Eric Metaxas' book and buy the Audible version of it.
And by the way, I've been texting with him this week, so he's coming. We're trying to work out a date in November, but he's going to actually come. We're going to bring that book.
That's so good. It is such a good book for pastors. It's good for us, but it's really good for pastors to give them the courage why they should do it.
Okay, I'm going to throw this one out here for any of our panelists that would like to handle this one. How do we handle our adult children who are so swayed by this woke agenda? Great question. All right, do you want to answer it? Who wants to take that one?
Do you have a...
Well, I would say I have 5 kids and none of them are swayed by the woke agenda. So I'm extreme. It started in the cradle.
It starts
in the cradle.
Train them up as they are young.
That's right.
And I do think, look, by the way, there's a lot of truth in that. A worldview is formed between 13 months and 13 years. And so as parents, we need to be intentional about teaching our children not Bible stories, but biblical truths. Why do you think the left wants early childhood education?
Amen. That's right.
They want to give them this woke, liberal ideology, this worldview that would steer them away from truth. And so we've got to be intentional about that. Yeah. And not be afraid to have these conversations with our children. I'm more concerned about my children's eternal destination than I am about their current pleasure and their desire to feel comfortable in this world. And I think we need to be challenging our children just as we would challenge our pastors to live by and speak the truth. If I am called a Christian nationalist, how should I respond? Dr. Hall, I'll give that one to you.
I think a good approach would be to say, what do you mean by a Christian nationalist? And if someone's accusing you of that, they might say things like, well, that means you're a racist, you're sexist, you're a militarist. And then I suppose you could say, well, what evidence do you have that I'm any of those things? What actions have I done? What words have I said that would give you reason to believe that I am any of these things? And hopefully it will fall apart, and then it might come back, well, you're a Christian who brings your faith into the public square. You argue for the protection of innocent human life. And you could say, yes, that's absolutely true. I'm a Christian who argues for moral policies. And let me add this. It is sort of funny. Even the critics of Christian nationalism do not say no one can bring their faith into the public square. They explicitly praise the civil rights movement, the civil rights leaders, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. If you bring your faith into the public square to argue for something that the left likes, and in this case the right should like as well, right? Civil rights for all, that's appropriate. It's only if you bring your faith into the public square to argue for the sanctity of all human life that you're a Christian nationalist. So we can disambiguate the question and discuss the issues instead of debating a label.
That is really good advice. In fact, Jesus would often ask questions when he was challenged with something to get to the heart of the matter, because it exposes what they are saying and what they're doing. It's really good advice. So, Michelle, I'm going to go to you with this question. How do we inspire Christians to vote who feel their vote won't count as they see elections as being rigged?
Oh, I think the main thing is whatever we do in life, we're doing it for an audience of one, and that's the Lord. So no matter what, we need to know that we have voted in a way that would honor him. And that's, to me, that's also, it's just part of the way we live our lives. It's part of the way that we worship God. How do we conduct ourselves? Yeah. And the vote is part of it. And I will tell you, just from a political point of view, you can't believe the number of races that are decided literally by one vote. Yeah. By one vote. You wouldn't think so, but actually it happens. And so if you look, like, for instance, in 2020, I think in Arizona it was like 10,000 votes separated Biden from Trump, something of that same number in Georgia. So, you know, we can argue, yeah, I know.
I mean, here in Virginia, I'm 8 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer, the control of the legislature was decided by one vote.
That's right. That's right, here in Virginia. And aren't we glad that we all showed up and voted for the governor in the state of Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin. What a great choice.
So that's,
and Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears.
Let me add to that, because there's a lot of people that are feeling like my vote doesn't count. And there were a lot of irregularities in the last election, but I will tell you this, that you've had about 19 states, almost actually bumping up toward 24 states that have passed election reform measures. They've been working the last 2 years to address a lot of these issues. And then the other thing I think we need to do, and this is why we're doing the pledge, challenging people to pray, vote, and stand, is that we just have to overwhelm them and know that there's probably going to be some cheating on the other side, but we're going to show up in such numbers that it doesn't matter if they steal a few votes or so. We're going to show up and legally win these races by being concerned, being prayed up, and being engaged as American citizens.
You know, Tony, one thing I'd like to mention, we just completed for the second year in a row 40 days of prayer and fasting at the Robertson School of Government. We believe very seriously in the power of prayer. So we just completed it, and I read that just today the Supreme Court overturned a Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling so that now errors that are on the ballots, those ballots won't be counted. That was part of the rigged election last time, where they counted ballots that they shouldn't have. The U.S. Supreme Court just ruled today that's not going to happen. So that's huge victory. So I want to urge everyone to pray. Pray yourself or get a few people together and just test God on this. Pray and see what he will do.
Just a note on that. A gubernatorial candidate in Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano, called his supporters to 40 days of prayer and fasting. And the media used that as evidence that he's a Christian nationalist. Look it up. That's what we're talking about, and that's why we cannot shrink back from these labels that are being assigned. Now, Dr.
Because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that